Welcome, everybody. I'm
We need
Julia,
you to.
owner of Fromage Kitchen, and this month is a really special version of Voyage Fromage. We are going to be focusing on all things Canadian. Last summer, it was kind of towards the end of the summer, my husband Aaron and I took a road trip. I love looking at maps, and that's how I like determining where I'm going to travel. And what I mistakenly did was I didn't fully map out the mileage and time to drive from one area to another. So I ended up driving about 1,300 miles to explore all these different cheesemakers, but no regrets because I got to visit all the farms of the cheeses that we're tasting on that trip, with the exception of Grail. That one was a little too far out of the way, but the other three I was able to visit, and I learned a lot more about their production. These were new producers for us at the time. We had not actually started importing, and so it was really exciting to start bringing in their cheeses. And then beyond that, some of these cheeses are exclusive for the club. And so this is sort of a celebration of Quebec cheeses, and then also some beautiful Canadian products. So these crackers are also from Quebec. This is actually Medard is a fromagerie, a cheese shop and bakery, and so they make these crackers, and I love them. These are going to be best paired with the soft cheeses, the first two that we're going to try, the Gray Owl and the fresh sheep's milk cheese. And then we also have the Coslicks, which this is Central Canada. This is Toronto. And of course, a maple mustard. I would recommend holding off on pairing this until we get to the harder cheeses at the end. That's where this guy's going to really shine. So without further ado, I've got my cheese board out with everything. I already ate half of the sheep's milk cheese when I got home because I was so excited to try it, and I realized I was going to eat the whole thing. So I managed to stop, but that's where I want to start, is that fresh sheep's milk cheese from Fromagerie. It's Famille Mignon de Charlevoix. So on the label, it says Mignon Brebis Fresh. So Brebis just means sheep cheese, and fresh is just fresh. And Mignon is the name of the family farm. So Famille Mignon de Charlevoix. So this was the furthest out of the way farm that I went on this trip. For context, their farm is about 2 hours north of Quebec City. And I'm not going to get super into the politics of Quebecois farming, but I think it's fascinating to compare this cheese with the farming practices from La Station, because both of them are heavily influenced by the Quebec policies with how they handle milk. And so I just am going to touch on that briefly. And I'm not an expert. I just started learning all about this. So if I misspeak, apologies, let me know. But I have been digging in by talking to the producers about their experiences. So this fresh nugget, first of all, this one is perfect with the crackers. And you can see the crackers they're more like flatbreads, because you can get like this entire beautiful flatbread and create whatever size you want. So I definitely recommend you try it on its own, but it's really, really exceptional on the cracker. So what this is essentially the freshest version that you can get of sheep's milk. It's sheep's milk cheese with no age to it. So it has been coagulated. The whey has been separated from the curds, but because sheep's milk is the highest fat content of any milk type between cow, sheep, and goat, you're left with this incredibly rich, creamy, spreadable, delicious, essentially spreadable cheese that is perfect on its own, but also perfect vehicle for things, whether it's honey or spices, herbs. You could use this as a substitute for cream cheese on a bagel. But going a little bit back into the family that makes this, so this is not farmstead production. So we've talked a lot about farmstead production, which is where the folks raise the animals and make the milk them and make the cheese. And that's generally a really highly sought after production style for us because of, the sort of connection and commitment to what they're doing. Now that being said, there's a very good reason why they are not raising the animals. So they're getting all of their milk, primarily sheep's milk, from their neighbors. And so they're very knowledgeable about the practices and the milking and the breed of animals. These are their neighbors, these are their friends. And so it is a very, very good, sustainable option. And when I was chatting with them about it, it's a brother and sister, and they're very experimental. They actually have vineyards up there. So they are winemakers and they love food and they're super passionate about experimenting with food and making things. And so not only are they making wine, they're making cheese. I talked about, when you separate the curd from the whey, a lot of times whey is discarded. That's the sort of watery part, whereas the curd has a lot of the fat content, the protein. And so you have this whey, which has a lot of protein in it as well, and flavor, but frequently it's used to feed animals or it's just discarded. And especially if you're not raising the animals, oftentimes it's discarded. Well, they are incredibly creative and built a distillery. And so they take the whey from these cheeses and they make their own eau de vie. And so they make these beautiful liqueurs. They make these beautiful wines. And then, of course, they make these beautiful cheeses. And so because of their desire to play with different products and also be very much, in the fields with the vines when they need to be, and it gives them a lot more flexibility to not have to raise the animals and milk every single day. And they're still producing an absolutely beautiful cheese. Now, going into the politics, just a smidge of it. In Canada, in Quebec, the farmers don't actually own the milk of the liquid milk. And so even if they did raise their own animals, they would still have to essentially pay for the milk, if that makes sense. And so for them, there was a disconnect with that where, first of all, and I think primarily they loved the freedom and flexibility to experiment and, try making all these other beautiful products, which I actually was able to buy when I was up there, and they are really, really good. But on the other hand, for them, you don't also get the sort of advantage, not saying that raising animals is inexpensive, but the milk price is set. And so whether you're buying the milk from your neighbor or raising the animals yourself, you're actually going to be paying the same amount for that raw material. And so for them, it became a no-brainer that they would rather just, work with their neighbors' farms and have that freedom and flexibility. But more than that, you see the freedom and flexibility in their cheeses. I'm really excited to be working with them, and we've started establishing a relationship. We've only been working with them for less than a year. But when we were up there, I think it became apparent how excited I was about their cheeses. And they brought out a cheese. They actually had to sneak it from their mom because they didn't have any left in the store. And they knew that she had one stashed away. It's called Secret. And that's the cheese that I am hoping to bring into the shop one day. They just make it in such tiny quantities with this same sheep's milk, and it's aged similar to like a little camembert. But I think This shows you the diversity of what a fresh cheese can look like, because I think a lot of times we just think of fresh goat cheese and you think tart, bright, simple. But I think this shows how complex a fresh cheese can be with no age on it. And the cracker, I think, is a perfect vehicle for it. But I'd love to know what you all think. So let me know. Either use the chat box, or you can always just unmute yourself and let me know if you like this one, if you tried it with the crackers, if you tried it on crusty bread.
You guys tell them what you think.
Yeah.
We tried it with honey and it was delicious.
Such a good idea. This with honey is actually perfection.
It was, yes.
And it's her honey.
And the honey came from my beehives.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, it was really good.
Oh, good. Everybody's having it with honey. It's a perfect combination to have this with honey, because
we're going to put her camera back.
sheep's milk can have almost a farmy quality to it. And I like seeing your faces, so you can leave it on.
That's right. We're not muted. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's actually better.
Could we be muted?
We're having a party.
I find so oftentimes sheep's milk cheese can have, a barnyard or farminess to it. And this one doesn't, I think, but there is more of a savory quality than like a fresh goat cheese. And I think that's why it pairs so nicely with honey, because you get that balance of the sweet and a little bit of savory. So
it just melts in your mouth.
yes, I love it. Any questions about this one, or are we ready to move on to the next cheese? Okay, so our next cheese is this beautiful thing. This is Gray Owl, one of the most distinct cheeses on our board. So the differentiation from the bright white interior to the ashy rind. So Gray Owl is made by Fromagerie de Tours. And so Fromagerie de Tours is actually, I think it's probably the longest running Canadian cheesemaker that we've been working with. So we've been bringing this cheese in for quite a while. We love it. They primarily focused on goat's milk cheeses. And a lot of times people ask if they can eat the rind on a cheese like this with the ash. And the answer is yes, absolutely. Now, you're not going to see the ash impart a great deal of flavor per se. And so a lot of times people ask, why? And that's one of my favorite questions with cheeses and cheese making is the why. And that goes back to food anthropology and why these decisions were made. And so when you think about the history primarily of goat cheeses, you often end up in the Loire Valley in France. And I always like to imagine myself back then. So hundreds of years ago, I am a small goat farmer and I am bringing my fresh, bright white cheeses to market. And market might be, 5 miles away, 2 miles away. I've got my horse-drawn cart. It's the middle of summer. It's hot. It's dry. And so what does that create? A lot of dust and a lot of bugs. And so you've got these beautiful bright white cheeses, really similar to the fresh brebis, actually, that you tried earlier. But you can see how bright white a goat cheese is from the center from the paste. And naturally, you're going to get a lot of debris on your cheese. And so it is thought that by taking the peels and sort of waste of vegetables and burning them and charring them and turning it into ash, you could coat that on the cheese to, give it this vibrant black color so that when you went to market, it would stand out, it would shine, and it would hide and mask all of the dirt and bugs and whatnot. Now, the fascinating sort of scientific side of things is that ash actually acts as something that moderates the pH on the surface of the rind. And so when you see this cheese, you can see this sort of brainy like texture. That's called a geotrichum mold. And that really thrives in on a rind that has a lower pH, and it will develop much better, and it'll avoid what we call slippage. And that's when the rind will actually detach from the cheese itself. Because when you actually, you guys, this cheese, I'm so happy in the condition that you all got this cheese, because where's my camera? There it is. So you've got the rind here, and then I'm going to squeeze it a little. And you see this part right here that that's the cream line. And then the center of the paste that's still firm, that's the paste. So you really have 3 cheeses in one, where it's aging from the outside in. And that is how the cheese will ripen and develop. So come here. My dog wants a little cheese. And so when it ages from the outside in, when it's at this stage, it means that it's aged just a little bit, so that you get that, bright sort of interior, but then you get a little bit of creaminess close to the rind. And then a nice rind that is holding the cheese together. And the rind, as I said, is edible and adds, a little bit of a stronger flavor. What I love about this cheese is there are very few goat cheeses that are as clean as this cheese. And when I say it is just such a clean, pure representation of a well-made goat cheese that it's hard to explain until you taste it. And I see lots of head nods, and that makes me happy, because it's got a depth of flavor and a creaminess, but it doesn't have anything too overwhelmingly biting or intense or tangy. It is just so well-rounded and nice that, I would love to know what you think. This is an absolute favorite in the shop, so you can kind of see why I think. But what do you think of it?
Okay, now you can talk. You can talk.
I just said 2 thumbs up. Yeah,
5
that is
stars.
delicious.
It's not nearly as acidic as a lot of goat cheeses that you would expect. They have a very delicate hand. It's also, it's a pasteurized cheese.
Mhm.
And it's made using microbial rennet, and that helps so there are different rennet types. You can use animal rennet, you can use microbial rennet, or you can use plant-based thistle rennet. And the rennet actually has a huge
who knew?
on the flavor of the cheese. And so microbial rennet tends to produce a cleaner cheese, sort of less animally. And again, with the goat's milk cheese, you do run the risk of having sort of those barnyard flavors. So I just think they do such an exceptional job of maintaining just the purity of the goat cheese. So this one as well with honey would be amazing. And I'm excited to highlight more of these soft cheeses in the club as well.
Yeah, and it did
Really?
get here in good shape.
Yay.
And this came all the way to Minnesota, so.
That's great. So my family is all in Eastern Oregon, right on the border with Idaho. So really, like, it's a trek. And so I do a lot of testing with shipping through that. They're my guinea pig, so that I can see how things arrive, because it's quite a long haul out there. So I'm really glad to hear that it arrived. And that's probably some of the benefit of the rind as well. The rind does help
Protecting it.
and it's a delicate rind. This is not like a rock hard cheese by any means, but it really does maintain the shape, the structure, and the form of the cheese nicely. So
You have this cheese all year round?
we
Julia?
do now. It's become so popular that we almost always have it in stock. And I love using it actually for private events, and because it's just such a crowd pleaser, and it's so different than a lot of goat cheeses that people have had before.
Yeah.
So,
And how big would be a full? Like this big?
so this is a quarter.
Okay.
So a whole one is about a pound,
Okay.
approximately. So I'd say like
Great for a party.
like the size of a saucer. Like
Okay.
Oh, that's pretty good.
is
Yeah.
probably your best reference point. But the funny thing is this is a small producer and they are you do see like sometimes like this is the most consistent size,
Yeah.
but I have seen them come in like super fat and pudgy, and then sometimes they make really big, and so we never really know what we're going to get. This is our favorite size
Yeah.
because it holds up the best, it ages the night, like it's got really nice surface area, like it really works well for aging and storing this cheese. So we love this size, but we will take whatever
Yeah.
they're willing to give us, really, when it comes down to it. So
Well, it's very mild and yet it has like this distinct flavor in there. And I don't know how to describe what that is, except that it's good.
yes, no, I love that. And I think and I love when you taste with friends, because that's when you have to, there's no right or wrong words to describe flavors. And sometimes how you interpret a flavor is very different than how someone else might interpret a flavor. You may be tasting the same things, but your reference points are different. And
Mhm.
so I always encourage you, when you're in a group of people that you know and you like and you don't feel judged, to be able to just say what you feel when you're tasting. One of the best memories that I have about tasting and thinking about flavor is I tasted a cow's milk cheese that was wrapped in spruce bark, that was really runny and ripe. And I always like to think of the first thing that jumps in my head. And usually it's a flavor. But in this case, all I could think about was being on a really cushy armchair under a heavy blanket in front of a fireplace. And that's where that cheese brought me. And then when I started thinking about pairings, rather than try to think about the flavors I was tasting, I thought about, what do I want to be eating in front of the fireplace? And so that's kind of how I thought about that. So you can get to the end point a number of different ways to
Mhm.
play around with it.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun. And I also do like to nerd out when it comes to cheese, obviously, and really examine the flavors, because I think there's a misconception, especially amongst cheese purists, that pairings do a disservice to the cheese sometimes, that you're masking the cheese. But sometimes when you get a really good pairing, so say you have a really strong pungent cheese and you only taste that level of pungency. If you add a pairing into it and that pairing softens the pungency to the point that you can taste the nuances going on under all of that, then that right there, to me, is a way to open up a new side of that cheese. So you're still honoring and appreciating the cheese. You're just tasting it in a different way. And so that's kind of how I like to think about pairings. We're not masking anything or hiding anything. We're trying to see what other doors we can open up. And so, yeah, that's
a good way to
really
describe it.
okay. So next up, we're going to go with a cheese that might be
Look at this
familiar to
one.
some, at least by look. So this probably looks familiar. This is a Morbier style cheese. And so the layer, a lot of times folks, when they see a cheese like this on our cheese wall, they think it's blue in the middle, a blue mold, but it's actually ash. So it's the same vegetable ash that you find on the gray owl. So this is made by La Station. And so this cheese is called chemin de brûlée. So the brûlée refers to the ash, of course, or the idea of burning something or firing something. And chemin is a little road that's near their farm. So I talked about kind of the comparison of the politics and whatnot. And I love the different reference points that the different farmers have. So this is made by La Station. This is a cow's milk cheese, and it's organic and it's raw milk, and they are completely farmstead. So this La Station, the cheesemaker, it's three brothers, and one brother tends to the fields and makes maple syrup because Canada. One brother raises the cows and milks the cows, and then one brother is in charge of making the cheese.
We want to live there. Yeah.
It's fabulous. And it's really beautiful to visit, honestly. It's just north of the Vermont border. So if you ever go to the cellars at Jasper
Road
Hill,
trip. Yeah.
it's not that far away. And so it's fabulous. And they're so nice and hospitable, just the absolute nicest. And it was so fun because I got to tour all 3 stages of this production, starting with the hay. And they were so proud to show me their hay because you're in Quebec. You're not going to grass feed cows year round. So how do you maintain the quality of grass fed feed? But in the middle of wintertime, in the UK, you see a lot of fermentation with the feed, a lot of silage because it's too damp, it's too wet. But in Quebec, they're actually able to dry the hay properly. But if you over dry it, you lose the nuance and the flowers and the nutrients. So they actually have their own barn with a hay dryer in it. And so they've pretty much honed it in to a very specific percentage where they're trying to maintain as like the highest level of moisture possible in the hay without allowing it to ferment. And so they're getting this really, really beautiful quality hay. When you look at it in person, you see little dried flowers and you see the leaves, and they don't bale it up. They've got it.
It's loose.
It's all loose, and that helps also to protect the structure of it. And they have, if I'm remembering correctly, it's like a claw that comes, like the games that you play, and it picks up the hay, and it's on this sort of kind of conveyor belt, and then it can drop it to where the cows can feed.
Oh, interesting.
Other thing that's fascinating is you have the milking parlor, which is spotless, and for raw milk production, it has to be. And so you have the milking parlor where they're milking the cows, and they're obviously making sure that everything is completely sanitary and beautiful. And then that milk only has to go by gravity from one pipe down into the make room. And so if you've ever made cream yourself, either in a jar or in a stand mixer, in a jar, it's just cream in a jar and you shake it. So imagine a tanker truck with milk. We don't think about milk as being fragile, but it really is. The more your milk sloshes around, the more your fat molecules are going to be disrupted, and the more that they are going to bind with one another. And what happens is when you then get to your facility to make the cheese, you get a very uneven product. So you're going to get a lot of fats and solids at the bottom. And so you're going to get an uneven make. And it's just, you get a much higher quality cheese making experience when you are delicate with the milk. And when you talk to the farmers that raise the animals, they always talk about that. They always talk about how delicate they are with the milk. And that goes for how they pipe it, how they... it really matters to them because they work so hard to produce this milk. They don't want to disrupt it. They don't want to ruin it. They want to keep it as pure as possible. So you can actually, when you're walking around the farm, you see the pipeline that's just at a gentle angle, and then to the cheese making facility. Now their cheese making
I know it's just I was just going to say, all this stuff.
It is absolutely state of the art. And this is where the government has come in and provided a lot of assistance, because the Quebecois government provides a lot of assistance for small farmers, cheese making facilities. And so they have a beautiful, beautiful cheese making facility that is state of the art. Now, they do too pay for their own milk. So it is a unique experience, but they are reaping a lot of the benefits from the support they are getting in their cheesemaking facilities. So I think it's really interesting to see 2 artisan cheesemakers. I got to pay the tax.
I can hear the dog.
I got to pay the cheese tax. You've got two artisan cheesemakers who are incredibly passionate about quality sourcing, quality cheese making, but have just very different opinions on this one issue. And I think it's a fascinating perspective from my end as an outsider to look and to learn from them. And I don't have any opinions one way or the other yet. Maybe one day I will on which method or which, who is right or what is better and what is worse. But for me, I'm just trying to learn from them and understand their struggles, the benefits, and that's it. And so, but I think more than anything, it's just fascinating learning from them. But their cheeses tend to be simple and pure because they're raw milk. A lot of times the milk speaks for itself. And with this one, typical to a Morbier, you see the rind. I don't know if it can come through on my camera, but it's got sort of an orange hue. That orange hue is due to the washing of the rind or brining of the rind during the make process. Here we go. And she's getting a lot of cheese tonight. And what happens is not only does the washing and brining of the rind retain a lot of moisture on the interior of the cheese, but it also promotes a bacterial growth on the exterior, which is what gives it that orange color and also a little bit of pungency. Now, this cheese, when you smell it, because it has dried out a bit, because at a certain point with a cheese of this age, they stop washing it and they put it in the cave for it to age. You're not going to you really just smell, this is what their caves smell like, actually. It's really true to what their caves smell like, what the rind is. But when you get a cheese that's still tacky and wet and bright orange, something like an Epoisse, and you smell that, it's going to smell like stinky feet. And that's that Brevibacterium. Because that Brevibacterium just thrives in that wet environment. And so which is exactly the same bacteria that you get in your dirty gym socks. And so there's a balance there. That's why cheese gets a little bit of a bad rap, especially on an airplane. But it really is that balance of that funky exterior, but then a clean interior. And so for this purpose, that sort of richness and savoriness does permeate slightly into the cheese as it ages. But more than anything, this cheese is just very clean. And again, I'd say this is another great one to have with the honey.
Yeah.
And it's a total it's a 180 for the last cheese that we've got, which is the Talia. So does anybody have any questions before we move on?
So this is made by the cheesemaker that won that award that I love.
Yes. So this is made by the same folks that make Alfred.
Oh, this
Alfred Lafermier. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Alfred
Morgan
is
gets me that.
fabulous. And so actually I forgot to mention, so we go to the cellars at Jasper Hill to select our own cheese. We do really like to select our own wheels of Alpha Tolman and Cabot cloth-bound cheddar because there's a lot of diversity from batch to batch. And then since we've been working with La Station and developed a relationship with them, we've started doing a selection for the Alfred Lafermier as well. So we're going up and we're selecting our wheels. We're picking the batch that we really like. And it's been so much fun because, I think the only challenge is that we're selling it so quickly that the first batch that came in just was gone. And so it was really, we're getting used to kind of the cadence, but we're so happy that people love it because we just think that the dedication to food in Quebec is absolutely amazing. They really have some deep-rooted, beautiful traditions with food there, and almost nothing is exported. And I have a theory for that. So I have done a lot of work with the Quebec Trade Commission to go visit different farms or, just travel to find products. And a common comment that I received is how challenging it is to sell products from Quebec to other provinces in Canada. And so they make an assumption that it's equally as hard, if not harder, to sell to the United States. When in fact, when we go through the process, and because of the trade agreement with Canada and the US, it's actually easier for them to ship to us than it is to trade amongst their own provinces. So I think it's eye-opening for a lot of them that they don't even realize that, that this is possible. And again, these are all small scale producers. So it's not like they're looking to export and grow, substantially. So for us, there's so many little nuggets to find. Just down the road, actually, from La Estacion is where I bring in the fermented garlic blossoms from a garlic farmer. So she takes garlic scapes and ferments them and makes the most beautiful garlic spread. And she's just down the road from them.
Wow.
And I found out that they were so close because they had a cheese with garlic fermented with garlic scapes in it. And it's her garlic scape. So it all comes full circle. I genuinely believe that people who love good food and quality food find each other one way or another. So okay, so the last cheese is punch. So this is the one that I would have with a little bit of mustard, because I find that when you're thinking about pairings and accompaniments, sometimes you want to match intensity with intensity. So if you've got a really intense cheese, it's great to have a really intense condiment. And that's, again, not to mask anything or hide anything, but it holds that they can actually stand up to one another. So this is a really unique cheese. This is from here, and it's called Talia. And this is a sheep's milk cheddar. So another really unique cheese. We really don't see a lot of sheep's milk cheddars out there. And the name Fromage Presbytier, this farm is over 100 years old, actually. And this is east of Quebec City, in the middle of farmlands. And it's beautiful. And I was able to go in the summertime. I'm pretty sure it's every Friday night. They have a giant festival in the middle of town. And it's got live music. And you buy your cheese. And they make these giant cheese platters, and you sit out in the grass and you listen to music.
I go there.
It's really amazing. And you've got wine, everybody's drinking wine, and it's just packed, but in a good way. And everybody's having a great time. It's family friendly. It's really great. And the centerpiece is this giant Presbyterian church. And so you look at it and you walk in, and at first you walk in and it seems like a typical church, and you can actually go up. So like when you walk in, there's two staircases, one on either side, that kind of wind up to sort of like a balcony area. And from the balcony area is where you stand and you can look down at the pews. And but it's actually their cave. So this came up for sale, this old church. And the farm decided to buy the church and convert it into their aging. And so that is why it's called Fromagerie Presbytier. And that is where they age all their cheeses. So it's a really beautiful facility to see. And they are actually quite famous for making a cheese called Louis d'Or. And it's a cheese that is the most similar cheese to Comté that I've ever seen anywhere outside of Comté.
The best French cheese.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's basically it's Gruyere is a similar style cheese, but this really truly has a lot of the heart and soul of what you find in Comté. And so you see a lot of that is what they're famous for. So you see a lot of those wheels stacked up in the cave. But this cheese, they get the milk of this cheese from a neighboring farm. So because as far as I know, they don't have sheep on their farm. But I do know that they get this from a neighboring farm. But this one is aged between 12 to 16 months.
Mhm.
And as you can see, it's such a contrast to the other three. It's vibrant, it's punchy. What I like about the sheep's milk is that it still retains that richness and sort of palate coating. But it is,
Love
I
that
mean,
with
punchy is the word that I keep coming back to because it really hits the top of your palate with a lot of intensity. But the texture is also quite nice, which is what you would typically find.
Is it?
And this is a very classically done cheddar,
good.
which means that they rub it in, or they wrap it in muslin cloth to
Mhm.
age. So it's more of an American thing to dip cheddar in wax. That's not typical of a lot of
Really?
Mhm.
cheddar
Mhm.
aging. Typically you see, and like, you know, the homeland of cheddar is the UK. And when you like, go, if you're in Somerset, they wrap it in a muslin cloth, which is very, very thin cloth, like cheesecloth. And and they wrap it and then they lard it. And so
And they lard it.
yeah,
Mhm.
so it's literally lard. Now the lard, obviously it's not vegetarian friendly, despite the fact that the lard never permeates into the cheese, but it's something we always like to let folks know. What it does is that helps seal the cheese, but the lard will dissipate over time, usually because of drying out and cheese mites. And
What?
so
Just mites.
Oh, okay.
So
Oh,
cheese mites are a real thing. We
okay.
had a lot of fun at the
Tell
shop.
us about them.
Yeah.
Yes. So they're literal mites that live on almost all cheeses, industrial, artisan. You know, you've got a lot of people who mites is a plague for cheesemakers because maybe they want their cheese rinds to be very pristine because it's cheese mites just love a good rind. They just gobble it up. And
Okay.
what happens when they gobble it up is they leave these tiny little craters filled with the dust that is left behind. And so now on the good side, when you have cheeses like mimolette, or you have some really rustic
cheese.
Swiss cheeses, those little craters add to the surface area of the cheese, and it actually will change how the cheese ripens and ages and intensify the flavor. Now, cheese maintenance, like in our caves, we have cheese mites, but you do have to control them. You know, a lot of the control of mites is brushing the wheels and flipping them and cleaning off the boards. So
Okay.
it's a typical maintenance because you don't, you know, there are caves that allow the mites to go completely crazy, and that is very specific for those cheese makers. But
cheeses. Okay.
because our cave houses so many different types of cheeses, we also are very strategic about how we arrange the cheeses in our cave because we, you know, there are cheeses that naturally have more mites on them, like mimolette, and we're not going to put that above or nearby a cheese that we don't want to have mites on it, like a French brebis, which has a very delicate rind. And so it's just a natural part of the process.
So you should not eat this rind, or it's okay to eat this
So
rind?
this one I would probably not
I
because
ate it.
oh, it's fine. No. It's because there's no,
Probiotic.
if you can see, there's no cloth on it anymore. Mine has like a string
Yep.
left on it.
I
So that's the thing.
Oh, I didn't feel
You're
like
good.
I got any of that.
Yeah.
It's
I
not
pulled it.
rind will not hurt you. Even if it's a cloth, even if it's wax,
awesome.
it's not going
Yeah,
to
you
hurt
would know if
you,
you were eating it.
but it's not ideal. And I always say that everybody has a threshold for their age of rind where they kind of naturally stop eating it. Mine is about 6 to 9 months. I find that I don't enjoy the rind as much when it gets to be definitely older than 9 months, where if I'm going to eat the rind, I want it to enhance the flavor of the paste and the cheese. And so a perfect example is like a tome de Savoie, which has this beautiful milky, creamy center and a really earthy, rustic rind. And you put the two together and it's just a perfect harmony. But like if I have a Comté, it's not going to improve the taste of the cheese for me personally. That being said, I know people who eat the rind of Comté and love it. And so again, it's all perfect personal preference. And as a testament to the fact that rinds are good at no matter the age, just consider Parmesan rinds. You're probably not going to eat them unless, you know, you give it to like a teething baby.
They're
But
tough.
you can put it into your soup. You can put it into your beans because
Oh, really?
all
I
it
think
is
the
is
belts
old cheese. And so it's got all the flavor retained in there, but it's just really, really, really hard. So you can still utilize it. So I would say my rule with rinds is taste it. If you think it enhances the flavor of the cheese, then eat it. If not, then don't. So it's pretty simple.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Won't tell you.
so
Now,
that
this
was
cheese reminded me of provolone for some reason.
yes. So you get these. So like provolone mandrone is like one of the like. I generally try to avoid using the word sharp with cheeses because I think it can mean so many
Right, it's like,
different
I
things.
like really super sharp provolone. It's
Yes,
right below that. It's almost like there, but not really.
exactly. And a lot of times people hear provolone and they think of like the deli slice, but the true Italian provolone
Yeah,
is
I'm thinking
like,
of the regular, yeah.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, the
Yeah, no, that
rounds
has
that are
so
hanging,
many.
yeah.
And I always think about like where the flavor is coming from and where it's hitting. So like this one really hits the top of your palate, and I get that with the provolone as well. And then
Mhm.
thinking about the finish as well, how it lingers and lasts. Apparently the taxes are very high on
Why
cheese
should I?
right now.
What kind
It's
of
Friday.
dog do you have?
Yeah.
She's a mutt. She is half herding dog, so border collie cattle
Border
dog,
collie,
and
okay.
half or lab and boxer. So
Oh,
Let's
okay.
see.
Hi.
so very much there. That's the begging for cheese.
Oh,
Taster,
Always.
yeah, they love cheese.
Yeah.
Always. And she's picky too.
Oh.
But well, I'm so happy that you all got to join me on this little Canadian journey.
Well, thank you so much for all the information.
Oh my gosh, I hope you enjoyed
I
it. If you have
learned a
any
lot.
questions at all, please let me know. But we are yeah, we're so excited for the next few months. Morgan, the next month we have is the UK, right?
no, last month was UK. Was it?
No. So we're doing British territorial. So okay, so it's very exciting. I did the Northern Run in March. And what I did was I joined Neil's Yard Dairy and David, and we went around and we tasted. We went to about 10 dairies, and it was absolutely fabulous. And I actually got to select wheels on that trip for the club. So the wheels, the
Wow.
cheeses that we're going to be enjoying for the club are going to be wheels that I picked out with David. So really
that's
excited
awesome.
about that. So it's really, really fun. So we're going to have a great time. But this one is great because a lot of what we like to do at the club, like we're going to start bringing in the fresh sheep's milk cheese because we've never, we want to bring these cheeses in for the club. And we love hearing the feedback from folks because I loved this cheese up there, but you never know what people will. But did anybody have a favorite of the four?
Oh, that's tough. Which one? The
Oh,
one with the
This-
gray?
Oh. This, it was between this.
Oh, the
these-
Greyhawk and the
Gray owl and the,
well,
with the blue, with
with
the
the
line.
with the rind.
Oh, with the line in the middle?
Yeah, like the
Yes. The first
What
two.
was yours?
So
I
okay,
like
so
the
the
first
Pillsbury
one, the
family
last
like
one.
Oh,
the
first
soft
and last.
first and last.
First and
Awesome.
last, yeah.
They were all
Nice.
winners.
But they were
So
all
everybody-
good.
I
They were
know.
all good.
They're all fantastic and all very different. But terrific. Well, I'm so glad you were able to join us. Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
Have a
hopefully
good
we'll see you
weekend.
next
I'll put a
month.
vote in for some fresh bread on the next one.
Okay,
except I'm
yes.
going to be in Italy. Never mind.
We will be doing more. We've gotten such great feedback about the fresh bread that we will be doing a lot more of it.
Oh,
because
good.
people loved it. And our bakeries, we work with local bakeries in the Boston area, and they love it too because they've never had the opportunity to share their bread with anyone outside of Boston because they're all small bakeries. So it's really fun for everybody. So
Oh, yeah.
you'll
Well,
see
thank
more
you.
of it.
All right. Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye-bye.